Will it be all right? It'll be fun without him.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's the funny one.
Wait, what? I thought I was the funny one.
No, you're the, what does it say? 3 cavemen and a lovely lady? Has somebody written a tune for that? We need a tune. 3 cavemen and lovely lady. Does that sound like it?
We do need a new intro music. Should we hit the intro music?
Huh? Yeah, intro music.
Ladies and gentlemen, Movies with Mark.
How do you do?
Hello.
Wonderful.
Are you guys all right there in Wisconsin?
It's much warmer than it has been, so it's getting there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Is it up to 0 yet?
It's like summer. It's like 16.
A balmy 16.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, we hit the double digits this week. Positive double digits.
First time in weeks.
Yeah, I hear from all my friends in Milwaukee that you guys are suffering. We were suffering a little bit out here in the Pacific Northwest because we had a lot of snow and ice and rain, and it froze, and something like 2,000 power lines were down in Portland alone. So I was out of power for 3 days, and there are people who have been out of power for 8 days now.
Ooh.
Well, I was reading about all the people in Texas too, and how now that they got power back, some of these people, their power bills, their electricity bills. There was one couple that had like a $10,000 electricity bill.
Wow.
I read that.
Because they have a company down there called like Gridley or something, that the pricing is based on the demand.
Oh, geez.
And so since the demand went skyrocketed with everything going on.
Well, like the windmills were frozen from the cold weather.
I don't know.
And they weren't the right kind of windmills for sub-zero weather.
Okay.
No, nothing. None of their stuff is rated for sub-zero because it's Texas. So
there are windmills that work really fine in that weather. But not only were the windmills frozen, because all the conservatives said, well, what do they call that kind of energy? It doesn't work. But all the oil rigs that pump oil, they were frozen too. Everything was frozen.
Yeah.
Well, a pipeline would have been really good about that.
Yeah. But now, what's the science behind that? Because I know I've read some of that stuff where once they got power back and heat came back on, then pipes started bursting. Oh, because the pipes were frozen, and then there was water, and they burst. Right. Okay. Right.
And I'm from the South. What we would do if we knew there was going to be a hard freeze, we would turn the water on so that it would freeze and let it run a little bit.
I saw a picture of someone that said, I tried leaving the hot water on so that it didn't freeze. And that didn't work so well because the picture is the water coming out of the faucet in like an icicle that's just frozen to the
It froze that much. Yeah, at Libby, Montana, down there in Mequon, we used to have to do that every winter in the basement. We would wrap the pipes with this tape that had electricity running through it, so that would keep them warm, and then just leave the tap on. You just have to leave it on for a drip, but apparently, if it gets cold fast, that's not enough.
So what movie did we watch this week?
All right, class. We watched a movie called Red River, a Western, black and white Western. I hope you watched it in black and white, directed by Howard Hawks, starring John Wayne, which will make a lot of people think they know what they're going to see, and Montgomery Clift in his first film role. I believe it was the first film role anybody saw him in. He shot The Trial, I think it is, with Fred Zinnemann, directed by Fred Zinnemann before it, but it didn't come out yet. So it was Monty Clift, who is a Broadway actor, a New York kid, but he's playing a cowboy in this. A really wonderful. Oh, now I can't remember the woman's name. Dolores. No, who plays the woman who takes the arrow in her shoulder?
For Joanne Drew.
Joanne Drew, that's it.
Yes.
Joanne Drew.
Yep.
A really beautiful Joanne Drew, and I love that part. I always go back to the movie mostly because of her.
She was great. She was great.
She's great, and she takes the arrow, and
absolutely.
Yeah, once she shows up, I was like, oh, I can watch the rest of this movie. Like,
she had to smack the shit out of him.
Molly, I'm very disappointed. So I later on, I want you to explain that to me. Why? Because to me, and maybe it's because I'm a guy. Maybe that's what the difference is. But I grew up, and maybe it's because of my age too. Undoubtedly, it's because of my age. Everything else is due to my age, I know. But I grew up on Westerns. I loved Saturday Morning, Hopalong Cassidy, Wild Bill Hickok, Lash LaRue, Zorro, all those half-hour Westerns. I grew up on that stuff. I've traveled through the West. I've lived in Montana. I've lived in Colorado. I've traveled everywhere in the West. I've slept in every state now in America, except Hawaii. I haven't slept in Hawaii. Anyway,
too, because my dad loved John Wayne and Zorro and all that stuff.
So you stayed awake the whole time you were in Hawaii?
I didn't. I know. I did. I did actually, because I landed there in a plane.
Okay.
And got on another plane and went to Singapore. But and people, I'm not crazy about. I don't like John Wayne, because if you think of John Wayne in his entirety, in the whole life of him, it politically very, what would be the polite word? Sort of conservative, I guess. Yeah, politically very conservative, and I'm not. But as an actor, and I don't even think he's a great actor, but in terms of what he does and what he did, he's really good. He was only 39 when he made Red River, and he ages from about 24 to somewhere near 60, and he does it, except for the gray in his hair, which is kind of sloppy. He does it very successfully, I think, without a lot of cranky old man kind of acting. But I know people don't like him. I don't know. I don't quite know why they don't like him, except for the fact that it's very hard to imagine, to watch him and not think, oh, that's John Wayne. And my dad liked John Wayne. Mm-hmm. Is that why you didn't like it?
I don't know.
John Wayne is Genghis Khan. That was kind of a stretch, though.
What?
When he did the Genghis Khan in that movie, John Wayne.
Oh, yeah. No, listen, I mean, listen, when you think about the way those guys made movies, they made 2, 3, 4 a year sometimes. I mean, before Wayne became John Wayne, he was making Westerns like one every 2 weeks up near Lone Pine in California. They cranked them out. They just made them all the time. So if you throw that much blah, blah, blah against the fan, some of it's going to hit and a lot of it's going to miss. So yeah, Genghis Khan is a mistake. Yep. And all the way around. And there's a lot of mistakes, but there are movies. There's a movie with Claudette Colbert on a train where he plays a soldier, where he's really quite charming in a romantic way. I can't remember the name of it right now. And I think Red River is a classic. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with me. The Searchers is considered a classic. It's on everybody's top 100 lists. And what Wayne carved out for himself is a character that's iconically American. Now, it may be wrong. I agree with you in so many cases it's wrong. I mean, the whole notion of the West and the notion of Native Americans or Indians and the relationship of the Indians to the white man and the whole attitude of men and towards women and women towards men, that whole power dynamic between men and women that exists in all of those movies. I mean, it actually did exist in life at that time.
Yeah.
In that way, that was the power dynamic. It doesn't mean it was right. It doesn't mean it was wrong. That was just what it was between men and women. And in the way we understand the Indians unfortunately comes from those movies. But I can't throw them out altogether. I need to look at them and understand that it's that the Indians weren't savages, weren't red, illiterate savages, that they had language. And not the Indians, a lot of Indians die in this movie because they're attacking a wagon train and circling the wagon train and shooting arrows, which maybe happened. I mean, I grew up thinking that there were gunfights with Gary Cooper and some guy in a black hat in the middle of downtown every 27 minutes, because I watched all these movies, and that's what I thought. In point of fact, there were probably maybe 6 of those kinds of gunfights in the whole history of the West. John Wesley Hardin killed 22 men, yeah, but he didn't shoot them down in the middle of Main Street. He shot them in the back, or he shot them, around a corner.
Well,
so yeah, we learned a lot of lies about the West and the settling of the West from watching these Westerns. But if you watch them as movies, just as a movie, as a story about a group of people and a community of people, I think it's a great story, and it's a really great movie. Because most people haven't seen it, the story begins with John Wayne in a wagon train a wagon train that's heading for California, going across Oklahoma, out of Missouri. I think they leave Sedalia, Missouri. And at one point, he breaks off from the wagon train. He says, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going south. There's good grass. I'm going to raise my cattle down there. And he's an obnoxious guy who does what he wants and gets what he wants, no matter what anybody else wants or needs, right from the beginning.
His woman tries to go with him, and he says, no, it's too dangerous for your woman.
Yeah, exactly. The girl that he obviously loves and really loves him wants to go. And he says, no, you stay, honey. I'll come back for you.
He brought his sidekick, though.
Groot.
Walter Brennan.
He brings Groot.
That was great seeing him.
Yeah, that's right. Besides Joanna Drew and Montgomery Clift, and it's got the inimitable, always there, Walter Brennan, as a young man at the beginning. Right. And then as they're miles away from the wagon train, and they see smoke, and they realize the wagon train has burned, and then Indians come after them, and you hear that what we always know from movie language. If you hear an owl, if it's nighttime and you hear an owl go, whoo, whoo, it's not an owl, it's an Indian. If you hear somebody else going, oh, imitating a coyote, it's not a coyote, it's an Indian. So the Indians, about 5 or 6 Indians surround them. They kill them all. And one of them is wearing a bracelet that he gave to the woman he left behind. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's classic American movie literature, but it's also literature, the girl he left behind. Wayne leaves the woman because she's not strong enough to go with him. He's the man. He goes out into the wilderness to tame the wilderness, and does so. And then we cut forward. He meets a young boy who was also with the wagon train, who managed to not get killed and walked away with a bull or a cow, a steer. I can't remember. When Wayne, it doesn't really matter, but he needed 2 of his cows. He had 3 cows, a steer, and 2 whatever the opposite of a steer is, regular cows. Yeah. Because he was going to start a herd. 2 of them, the 2 cows get killed. The steer lives. The boy shows up with the cow. Now he's got to match things, so the boy gets to come along. He's not doing it out of kindness for the boy, necessarily, although there is a glimmer of affection that he may begin to have for the boy. He's doing it for opportunism. He needs a cow. He needs to start a herd. He's come all this way. He's going to go all this way. And so he does. I'm probably not making this movie sound really attractive, am I? I don't know.
It's exactly smacking though.
And then you cut forward 24 years or something. Yeah, 14 years. 14 years. And he's managed to raise a huge herd of cattle out of these 2. And there's other people, there are Mexicans that also own this land. He takes the land from the Mexicans by force.
With
what?
With a little boy and there's 3 people.
They were good shots.
Yeah, that's right. With Groot and him and a little boy, he somehow manages to take the biggest ranch in Texas. and he takes other people's cattle. He steals other people's cattle. When he decides he's broke, doesn't have any money left. He's built a house, built a barn, built the ranch, built the infrastructure is there, but nobody to buy his beef. The only place they can buy beef, and by this time it's 1865, the end of the war. The boy has grown up to be Montgomery Clift. He's gone off to war. He's come back. He's learned to kill because he carries his 6-gun like every 12-year-old boy in America when you went out to play cowboys and Indians. And if you were a cowboy, I did it myself every day, strapped on my 6-gun and made sure it was hanging halfway down my thigh, right where I could quick draw it, which isn't the way to wear it at all. I mean, unless you're just standing leaning against a bar all the time. Not if you're riding a horse. If you ride a horse and your 6-gun is down there, it'll fall out.
Fall right out.
So the Matthew Garth, the boy, has grown up to be Monty Clift, and they decide they have to drive their cattle to a railhead, and they're going to go back to Sedalia, Missouri. That's what John Wayne decides because he is
the boss.
He's the boss. That's right. He's the man. and they set out to do this. They hire some cowboys, amongst them a great cast of characters. Noah Barry, that kid who wears the checkered pants and gets killed later, whose name I can't remember right now, is so great. He's in so many John Ford westerns.
And hilarity ensues.
And John Ireland is in it too.
John
Ireland goes along.
Cherry Valance.
Cherry Valance, that's right. And then the argument arises because they hear new information. News, it's new though, is the operative word. John Wayne being
Stubborn.
Conservative old what?
Conservative old stubborn prick.
Stubborn, thick-headed. He's determined to do what he said he was going to do, which is go to Sedalia, Missouri. The fact that there is now a railhead in Topeka is just a rumor. We don't know. It's technology. We can't trust it. We can only trust what we know. And that's that there's a rail. So the dispute arrives between his crew, his bunch of people, and John Wayne about where they're going to go. And it's a long drive. They're on the road. They're on the trail, eating beans and beef for 3 months, driving cattle. And this was actually done. I mean, it's based at John Chisholm created a trail that went up towards out of Texas, up towards Topeka, Kansas. This was the first trail cattle drive on the Chisholm Trail, because they go up to the Red River, hence the name. They cross the Red River as the movie begins, and then they drive the cattle a month to get to the Red River, and then they have to go another 2 months across to Topeka, Kansas. And at the Red River, everything comes to a head, and the crew mutinies and turns against the captain, the boss, John Wayne, and they toss him out. He's been he whips people. He's a real titan of industry. He's a real dictatorial. He's a bad guy. He
shot 3 guys right before that.
What?
He shot 3 guys right before that.
He gets to the point where even his trusty sidekick that he's been with forever, Walter Brennan, turns on him. So
right.
See, and this is my most conflicted part of the movie, because at this point is Matt a villain or a hero? Or so meaning, is he a hero because he obviously saves the drive and he takes the cattle and everyone else and eliminates the problem? Or is he an entitled millennial that just piggybacked on his dad's coattails and stole all his work?
No, he never meant to steal it. He said right off the bat, "I'll get your cows to market and I'll get you the money for it."
Know.
Like,
right? Yeah, he's not going to steal the crew.
I'm a little conflicted on.
He
this
hadn't slept for days. He was drinking and he wasn't making good decisions. So this guy took control of the situation. He kept that other guy from getting killed. And then he handed him the gun and said, "Go ahead and shoot him. Go ahead and shoot him." The guy didn't want to do it.
I don't know.
I think he was finishing the job. John Wayne was in no condition. He hadn't slept. The guy even said, "You haven't slept in days, and you're drinking alcohol." So
right, and he's been shot in the leg. His leg is injured. He's bleeding.
That's what he has a horse for. You need to walk.
They left him a horse. They took his ammunition away from him when they leave him behind, and they know he's going to come and get him.
He had to tell him, "Wait right here.
Look, if the kid
I'll be back."
If the kid had let him hang those two people and carry on, they would have had a mutiny, and there would have been infighting, and they would have tried going to Missouri and probably been killed. Like, it would have ended.
We don't know that.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that as well.
Well, because that trail to Missouri, the whole thing was that was the trail people knew. That was the trail they had, like, probably bandits sitting waiting to just steal the herds and go.
And all through Kansas at that time, during the war and even at the end of the war and after the war, there were these just outlaws that were robbing people and stealing cattle, murdering people. What do they call them? John Brown was actually part of that crew before he went to West Virginia to Harper's Ferry, I think.
So he's definitely a hero, I think.
Yeah, if they had gone on to Missouri, they would have all died. The cattle would have all been dispersed. So Matthew Garth saves the day. He's the hero. He certainly is a hero to the men. But it's interesting to think of him as a spoiled millennial who's piggybacking on his dad's.
Yeah, he didn't create it. He didn't do the initial groundwork to get this all started.
He was there. He was there when he was there when he was 14 years old, and he worked every middle of the day. And even from the beginning, when he was a 14-year-old, he gets the drop on John Wayne. John Wayne takes his gun away, but he doesn't stand down meekly from John Wayne ever. He does take orders the way we're supposed to take orders from our dad. Our dad is always right, right? Not my dad, but
let's not get
my dad was John Wayne. I saw him drop a railroad tie and his foot went, and he went like that. Gave me nothing. He would have been a whole different dad if he'd just gone, "Ow, fuck my foot," or something like that. Sorry, I can't swear, I know, because there are children listening. Watching. But I like the idea of I mean, that's a real, you're John Wayne. You see him as a spoiled millennial who's just taking, and there's that point of view, but it's a great argument. I mean, it's a great discussion that the movie promotes. And I think it does, because John Wayne does heroic things. In terms of what white America thinks of itself in terms of the American West, he goes out into the wilderness. We think there's nobody there, but there are Native Americans there, there are Mexicans there, there are people living and making a living off their land and had been for thousands and thousands of years. But John Wayne, because he's manifest destiny, he's white European descendant, he goes out there and tames the wilderness. He makes it into a ranch. He probably put a fence up around it. I mean, you don't need fences on that land.
No, but the thing that got me, how Cherry Valance was working with the other guy who confronted him about some of his cattle being with John Wayne, and then John Wayne smartly offered him whatever it was, $2 a head for the cattle, and I'll settle up when I come back. And the guy said, "You got a deal." And then he goes, "I'm going with him. I'm not working for you anymore. I'm working for this guy." And I thought that was pivotal. I thought that was great. I thought that was a great way that he switched teams because he was impressed with the team.
Well, you know who he is right away from the way he sits on his horse and leans out over the pommel and is so completely comfortable and relaxed. And he falls in love with Matthew Garth right there too. I mean, in that kind of.
It seemed like some kind of flirtation going on there.
Definitely. Oh yeah, I mean, it's poised. Well, look how far I can pissing in the snow. How far can you piss? I mean, I was a Boy Scout. You guys were Boy Scouts, probably.
I was,
yeah. And we had pissing we literally had pissing contests, and he and Cherry Valance Matthew Garth and Cherry Valance sort of set up this pissing contest right from the beginning. But they're charming about it. It's the way boys are. In that time,
be a gunfight with them somewhere in that movie, but it never materialized.
It never. Well, everything else, all that energy that would have gone towards a gunfight, and everybody thinks there's a gunfight. And Wayne says, just keep watching. They're gonna come at each other at some point. But Wayne needs the hired gun. He can tell from the arrogance in John Ireland and Cherry Valance that this guy is going to be a good guy to have around. And he starts giving him all kinds of special jobs. When the three guys disappear and take ammunition and flour and bacon, he sends Cherry Valance because he knows Cherry Valance will get the job done.
He only brought back two, though.
He brought
back two. That's all right. I think Wayne, I'm surprised if Wayne was expecting to bring any of them back. He would have been fine if they'd killed them all.
Right.
As Wayne was going to kill them when they got back anyway.
Absolutely.
He was going to hang them, right? He wanted to have a nuclear bomb as a deterrent. So he wanted to hang these guys as a deterrent so nobody else would cross him. It's all wrong. Every decision he makes. But in terms of how America pictured itself in 1948, historically, as the people who tamed the West, who took the wilderness and put roads across it and parking lots and Walmarts and Targets and train tracks. Yeah, starting with train tracks, ending up with Targets. John Wayne's the hero. He's the man. He's the guy that gets it done. Get her done. That's what John Wayne's motto is. And the new generation, the millennials, the spoiled millennials, take what they've got and embrace technology, embrace science, the railroad, and embrace new information, the news, the media. The media was tom-toms and people telling stories around a campfire. That's how they find out. And he embraces it and says, "We're going to Topeka," and they go to Topeka. They find this magnificent woman, and we never know really whether she's heading west with a wagon train filled with craps tables and roulette wheels. We hear
coffee.
Say again.
And coffee.
What'd you say?
Coffee.
And coffee. That's right. Right. And but we never know whether she's a prostitute or a lady of the evening or whatever the correct word is, because the primness of the world automatically puts them in a certain place because they've got gambling tables and there's women. And they get to Topeka and they sell and they're successful. They sell the cattle to again, another actor who has been in 100,000 westerns.
Isn't it Abilene? You keep saying Topeka.
Oh, Abilene. I'd say Topeka. You're right. Abilene. You're right. Sorry, Abilene. Exactly. And finally, John Wayne catches up with him, and there's one of those. Nobody except for Marlon Brando got beat up in movies the way Monty Clift gets beat up. The way he gets beat up. Have you ever seen From Here to Eternity?
Yes.
You have. Good. Somebody is an adult and has seen From Here to Eternity. Molly, it's on your list. You have to watch From Here to Eternity.
Okay.
Before the next time we gather.
Deborah Kerr also, I think.
What?
Deborah Kerr. Was she
in From Here to Eternity? Deborah Kerr, Frank Sinatra got an Academy Award for it. Burt Lancaster. Book by James Jones, directed by Fred Zinnemann. Yeah, it's a great movie. And he gets Clift. Are you guys at all? Were you familiar with Montgomery Clift before this movie? Did you know who he was or anything about him?
I did not know.
I did.
No.
The adult. I knew.
The adult knew. Okay, good.
You're moving out of the cave, William.
Yeah, you can come out into the light, William. You other guys.
Awesome.
Stop rubbing those.
And the lovely lady. Uh-huh.
And the lovely lady.
Just by default. All right.
I'm the last caveman left.
Two cavemen, one adult, and one lovely lady.
Monty Clift brought a kind of a vulnerability and a sensitivity to movie screens that comparable to what James Dean did, comparable to what Brando did. I mean, he was a kind of a new kind of an actor without being a method actor, a Strasberg method actor. He brought a new sense of what it meant to be male to the screen. Now, if anybody does any research about him, they'll question that, because he was essentially fairly openly gay in New York, where you could be, and tortured about it because of what it meant to be homosexual in anywhere in America in those days. You were not wanted, you were not liked, you were feared, and not understood, and nobody even wanted to understand you. So, which may have helped create some of that vulnerability. But he was quite comfortable and happy and fine guy in New York, but tortured anyway later. But a lot of that sensitivity in that. I mean, there's a lot of great Montgomery Clift movies, From Here to Eternity, Raintree County, with Elizabeth Taylor. He's worth looking at a lot, because he really brings something to the screen that nobody had ever brought before, a kind of a depth of sensitivity and vulnerability, and that juxtaposed against Wayne. I mean, it's perfect casting, because Wayne is that American ideal, the man who, even if he does feel things, he doesn't show it because the job needs to be done. We must go on. Whereas Monty Clift is the vulnerable one. He's the one that, and because he's the son of the king, he's the prince. When the king goes mad, as Lear goes mad and can't handle it anymore, has to he's shuffled off into the wilderness alone, and his fool Groot goes with the prince, and the prince leads the men. That's how it happens. So, but I think it's a great movie. You guys obviously didn't seem to like it that much. You go ahead. Your hands are moving. That means you want to speak.
I got two issues. The first one was talk about pay inequality. So I can't remember which actor it was, but they were asking him what he was going to do with his money once they finished the drive. And he was going to get $100. And I realized that was a lot of money back then. He talked about he was going to buy a pair of red shoes for his wife when he got back. So, right. And I had no idea how much money this whole drive was going to create. Well, then they get to the end of the drive, and they figure out they're going to get around $180,000, and this kid's getting $100.
Well, he might have gotten more at the end because they didn't realize how much they were going to get for it. I don't think there was as much demand in where they were originally going, because there were drives going there. Even if the original drive that started didn't get there, the cattle got there. This Aberdeen, no one Abilene. No one really knew that there was a railroad there yet.
Top dollar.
No one had made a drive there yet. They didn't have cattle there yet. They were just excited, so excited to see them. So they paid top dollar for this, more than they thought they were going to get, because.
So maybe there's a readjusted scale at the end.
I would think so.
And then secondly, he gets the check for $50,000 after he sells
right.
it. What does he do? He tucks it in his cowboy hat. And I mean, it's a check for $50,000, man. You can put it right in your cowboy hat.
Where else are you going to put it?
Yeah, where else are you going to put it?
You're going to put it in a pocket, put it somewhere safe. I mean, come on. You're going into the bar and drinking with the guys after you got a check for $50,000 in your cowboy hat.
The pickpockets don't get into the hat. They get into your.
Yeah, you don't mess with a man's hat.
You take it off and you set it down.
You don't take that hat off if you got $50,000.
You don't take it off inside, outside, anywhere. And if you're living in that kind of weather, where the weather changes, if you put it in your pocket, it's going to rain and your pants are going to get wet. You live wet. So in your hat is the best place for it.
I don't know.
I have to say this about Montgomery Clift. He took quite a beating from John Wayne before he finally hit him back. And it was like, come on, man, hit him. What are you going to do? He's beating the crap out of you. But it's just like, that was like his dad. And he didn't want to do it. And he didn't want
to fight his dad. And
his dad didn't want to kill him. He didn't. They loved each other. Just like when she brought them all to their senses and they laid there on the ground and she's shooting at him. It was crazy.
She's tough, boy. I like her. I love Joanna Drew.
I think one of my favorite parts in the movie was when they were in the circle, the caravan circle, the wagon train. Yeah, and she gets shot with an arrow.
Yeah, she gets shot with the arrow in the shoulder.
I thought watching it that the arrow had just gone over her shoulder, and she was just sitting there like, well, that was close. And then he goes and he's pulling it. It actually went through her shoulder, and she's just sitting there like nothing happened. Like, dang.
This is going to hurt her.
She's the kind of woman you needed out there in the West.
Right?
Pull that
She's
arrow
the one you
out.
want to take with you.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you take a woman like that with you. You don't leave her behind.
You didn't really get much of her in this movie, but the little bits that you got of her, like towards the end, were great. They were very, very great.
Yeah, she definitely added a nice twist to it, or another dynamic. Yeah.
See that part, and then the part with the inner, the exchange of the teeth. I think
what?
The exchange of the teeth.
Oh yeah, yes. With what's the Indian's name?
I don't know. Did they ever say
Yeah,
what his name was?
In the poker game, right? And he had.
Wait, did we lose Mark? We might have lost Mark.
Mark?
He's frozen.
There you are. Okay.
There he is.
He's called Two Jaw Crow. Quo. Q-U-O.
That's the nickname he gave himself because he won.
Yeah, because he got the teeth. Because he wins them in a card game from Groot. His store-bought teeth that Matthew Garth brought back from the war as a present for him.
You're not actually going to take an old man's pair of teeth. What are you going to do with them? I'm going to be Two Jaw.
That's right.
And then he would let him use the teeth to eat, and then had to give them back.
Right. I thought that was fair. He won them fair and square, but he let him have them to eat.
Oh, and there's one scene where the gentleman, the Indian gentleman, comes up, and they were just breaking camp, and he's like, "About time you're here. You're late. Now I don't get to eat."
And the stampede I love the stampede too.
Yeah, that was good.
And all the sort of authentically shot trail ride things. I mean, I don't know how they shot the movie. A lot of it shot on sets back in Hollywood or maybe in Tucson where they had sets. But a lot of it, I guess they shot it around Sedona, Arizona, and near somewhere in New Mexico too. I think a lot of it. But the trail ride stuff, I love that stuff. But I grew up thinking I was going to be a cowboy, and I thought that was what life was like. I was going to herd cattle for the rest of my life. But the trail ride crossing the river is great, and the stampede, where they have to turn the stampede and stop the cattle, and that's where Dan, the guy that you were talking about, that's going to buy a pair of red shoes for his wife. He's going to buy a piece of land too. He could be at a piece of land and a pair of red shoes for $100.
Sounds like a deal.
But then he, of course, as soon as he says he's such a sweet kid, and he's out there in his checkered pants, looks like he works in a kitchen somewhere, and as soon as he says, "And what are you going to get with your $100?" "I'm going to buy a little piece of land for myself and my family, and I'm going to get my wife a pair of red shoes because she's always wanted a pair of red shoes." Right then, I know he's going to die.
Yeah.
And because that's American movie language.
Yep.
And he does. But I think the movie is a gift for those great, wonderful little things, like the woman getting the arrow in her shoulder and pretending it isn't even happening, and being more interested in the guy, but in who is this guy?
There he goes.
The cattle drive. I'm sure it had been done before, that kind of montage of faces where everybody going, "Yee-haw!" and starting the cattle drive, boom, boom, boom. And you've seen it 100 times. This may be one of the first earlier times where anybody had actually done it that way and put jammed energy into a movie that way, where they start out on a medium shot and by the end you're this close. On the camera is. It's great. There's great cinema in the movie. But so what else did you think about it, Molly?
Me?
Yeah.
I think.
Let's go around. Is it time to go around the room and get everybody's opinion?
We can do that.
Let's go around.
Gosh, but I don't know what to give it. See, I think I was really bothered by John Wayne's character in this movie. I really didn't like his demeanor and attitude towards everything.
All right. Well, let me tell you something that a good friend of mine once told a radio announcer that he was doing an interview with. It's not a documentary. It's a movie, and there are bad characters in movies.
Yeah.
But it's just a movie. So if you don't like John Wayne, you're not necessarily supposed to. You're supposed to I think you're supposed to wrestle with that. Wrestle with who do you go with? Who do you side with? Do you go with John Wayne to Sedalia, or do you go with Matthew Garth?
Right.
Youth to Abilene.
To me, that just threw me off and made it a little difficult to get into because, until you get a little further into it, until they get to that like kind of turning point actually at the Red River, maybe a little bit before, you don't really get that many more of the other character interactions when there's someone that you really get invested in that's going to be a main character in the movie. So it's just him. And I think that made it a little difficult for me to get into. Towards the end, I was more invested in it, and I did go back and appreciate some of those moments. But
well, it's a whole different. The atmosphere around the trail drive, the atmosphere, everything changes when they toss John Wayne overboard,
right,
and leave him behind, because it's new leadership. It's a new way of governing. It's a much more democratic way of
Wayne have let them go to the other caravan and party for a night. Probably not.
Well, yeah. If John Wayne had been leading it, would they have even tried to rescue the wagon train, or would they have avoided it and let the Indians? Because it's what happens out here. You step on a rattlesnake, you get bit. You just now we know where the rattlesnake is. Let's avoid it. If John Wayne, they wouldn't have gone in and tried to save him. I don't think.
I mean, and it was a 2-hour-long movie.
Yeah, 2 hours and 12 minutes.
Did it feel really long to you?
At the beginning, it did. Yeah. It did.
The whole. You mean up until that point, up until they split?
I guess.
Up until it becomes Matthew Garth's movie rather than Dunstan's movie?
Yeah. For me, I guess I grew up watching Westerns and John Wayne and Zorro and all that stuff because that was my dad loved to watch, but I never really got really into them.
Yeah.
I guess. So maybe it's just not my style of movie. I can see where the appreciation for the movie is and where it is a classic. It just, I guess, wasn't my typical style.
I'm going to get all psychological. Do you think you resist letting yourself go for them because that's part of your childhood, watching with your father and your father loving it, and not or you just don't get it, you just don't like it?
I didn't know I was going to have
let's move this to the couch.
A therapy session.
Could you just lie down on the couch and don't look at me? We'll just talk for a while. Dim the lights. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your relationship with your father.
Maybe not so much that it was what my dad liked as a kid, sitting and having to watch these old black and white movies that I didn't care about and couldn't appreciate as a kid. They were just boring to me. Like, to me, as a kid, I was just sitting there going, can't we watch something else? Like, come on, Dad.
Yeah, no, especially if you had to watch them, because it was all, because he was John Wayne and he said, it's my TV. I paid for the TV. I'm paying for the electricity. We watch what I want to watch. Yeah. Sit down and shut up, girl. No, I can understand that. But I'd like to be able to get you to a point where you can see them more objectively, more straightforward. Because I think some of them are great. The Searchers is really great. Huge problems with Natalie Wood and Jeffrey Chandler in The Searchers, but it's a great story. And Shane is good, even though I know a lot of people don't like Shane because they don't like Alan Ladd. My Darling Clementine is one of the great ones with Henry Fonda. One of the many poorly told stories of the OK Corral and Wyatt Earp. I don't know. I love Western, so I want everybody to love them.
What are you giving it?
You're gonna hate me.
You can go ahead, Molly. Just be cruel to me.
I know it it should belong in. It is a classic, and to lots, probably 3, personally. But I can see the appeal, and I can
3.
see the. Yeah,
I agree with that assessment. I also give it a 3. There seemed to be something kind of missing, and it just ended so abruptly. It seems like, I don't know, it just seemed like there should have been more. I do, however, like the Western music that they played during the movie. The soundtrack, I mean, I just think it was great. It just gave you that kind of feeling, that Western kind of feeling. And Montgomery Clift, I don't think he had too much chemistry with the girl. He seemed to have more chemistry with Jerry Valance. It just seemed kind of weird, his performance with the girl. And I was like, she's smoking hot. What's the matter with you? He just seemed kind of disinterested to me.
Yeah, that's that. That's I mean, now that I told you about Monty Clift, you can be leading into it, but that's part of the American movie lingo. That's the language that the sort of deferential, the man who's on his own and comfortable with men, but when he's with a woman, he's kind of doesn't know what to do and trying to be polite and da da da.
Except John Wayne, who made her turn around for him.
Oh yeah,
right. I know. And after now, we've seen what was that movie? There've been that scene has been in a couple of movies lately since Me Too, where the news director, the one I remember is the Roger Ailes. Doesn't he make her lift her skirt up a little bit or turn around? Yeah, I mean that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn
around for me.
No, I know that
tips
tell
me what to do, and then she stands up and does it anyway.
She does it anyway.
Yeah.
And then he's like obviously just ogling her like up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's disgusting, and it's interesting that
I love how you threw that out there. Yeah, it's disgusting. It was just funny to me.
Well, it is. Well, it is. I mean, but it's and it should be. I mean, I don't. It wasn't the intention. It wasn't Hawks's intention. It wasn't Wayne's intention to be disgusting. But when we see it now, it was and it is. But I think it's good to know, to recognize that times have and are changing, and times have changed, and things are a little different now.
I had several issues with the movie. One, just based on the fact that everyone would repeat what the person before them had just said, and it was like this thing that was kind of annoying. And I realize it's very small and very, very petty of me to point that out as my critique. But
did you notice that, Mark?
No. What? I'm not sure what he's saying. What did he say? It
would be like somebody would be talking, and then all of a sudden, like the person would be standing 2 feet away, and they could totally hear him. And all of a sudden, they'd say, "Hey, Matt, did you hear that someone so?" And it's like, and it happened all the time. Where like, yeah, I was standing right over there. I mean, it was just this.
It would repeat what the other person said.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that.
I don't either. I didn't notice it.
Anyway, but I did appreciate.
Yeah, I don't know. You've got not to apologize for it or to explain it. This movie was made in 1948. Overlapping dialogue didn't happen really until when? Until Robert Altman, when he really overlapped dialogue, and dialogue started not being so important. The words and this was still in the days when people were imitating plays when they were making movies. And to take a movie outside and shoot it outside like this was a big deal. But in order to get clean sound, and also, well, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
it does as far as the dialogue. It definitely does, and that kind of explains it. And as we've watched some more of these older movies, my appreciation is growing for them, because it's not something that I grew up watching or something that was ever in my family. I mean, growing up, we watched like 5 movies in my house. It was either Rocky or one of the 4 Rockies at the time, or Hoosiers. So that was basically the background.
Wow.
the background of my cinematic
There's some eclectic
childhood. So I'm learning. I did appreciate the landscape, the cinematography of it. I thought was, for that time, at least in my opinion, was very advanced. Especially the cattle drive scene. I thought that was, that to me, I'm like, how do you pull this off back then? It seemed very difficult and impressive. But I still have to give it a 2.5, and I am going to go back and rewatch it, and I will update my review if I do find things different. If I do find this non-caveman appreciation for things like this.
You're gonna come back and tell us your updated score, or
sure, if you want me to.
I don't know.
No.
Don't.
All right.
This is it. You living with a 2.5.
All right, 2.5.
Okay.
You're gonna mention it in 2 weeks. Oh, I think I'm gonna bump it up. Come on, man.
You never know.
No, I think that's great. If you
great.
If you find enough in it. No, I mean that's what movies are for. It's like the first time you look at Guernica at the Museum of Modern Art, you may walk right by it and think, boy, that's just a mess of how do they call that art? But then the second time and the third time, you might, if you're drawn to it and you want to go back and look at it again, that's good. That means it's working in some way. You can't just, you're right. You can't just watch a movie and get it all at one time, especially a really well-made movie and a good movie, a movie that is made with an artist's intent. And I think Howard Hawks, even though he was just a movie maker and he would never probably call himself an artist, he functions as one. Mm-hmm. And you've got to go back and look at it a couple of times. So I think that's great if you do go back and look at it. And we should do that if anybody wants to go back and look at To Have and Have Not again. Once you get, because I am asking you guys to watch movies that I realize you're not familiar with. I mean, there's a lot of people your age who have never seen a black and white movie and never would. And as soon as they see it's black and white, something goes off in their head and says, why? I don't want to watch this. But you watch it because some schmuck tells you to watch it. And my dog is making noise in the background. I don't think he wants to go out. Anyway. So it's like this is a history class. So that's why I started with, all right, class, what do we watch today? I realize that I'm challenging you, and I don't mean to patronize you by saying I'm challenging you. It's a challenge to watch movies that aren't part of how you've grown up watching movies. And I asked myself this question, why. I was thinking, I keep asking these guys to watch old black and white movies that I like. And I'm not so old that I grew up on them. I watch them because it's my job. Acting in movies is my job. Movies are my job. Movies are my life, as Marty Scorsese says. So I want to watch them because I think you can't participate in something now if you don't know the history of that thing, of how that thing came to be. So I watch them because I need to. And I think it's important for people who are watching movies to know where those movies came from. That some movies, unlike Trapped in Paradise, are more than just.
That's a great movie.
I had to get back. It's a great. Are more than just movies that are just an entertainment. They're more than popcorn. There's part of a continuum, the continuum of this art form. And I will call it an art form because it can be and is in many ways an art form. So that's why and we don't have. I was talking about this with Molly off the record. What I say? I should mix it up. I'm not going to keep making you guys watch these movies. I mean, I hope you do, and I'd like to go back to them. But I think, when William wanted to watch Trapped in Paradise and then conveniently got sick so we didn't have to talk about it. The dog ate my homework too. We should watch movies that you guys want to watch. I mean, I'd happily watch a couple of the Rockies again and talk about them because I think the first one I think is iconic. I'm not sure I would go on one of my top 100, but in terms of the language, the cinematic language it uses, it's fascinating. And if you don't think Sylvester Stallone watched old black and white movies before he wrote that and studied them and studied the history of movies, then I think you would be wrong.
I've been enjoying watching the classics, but
what?
I said I've been enjoying watching the classics, but it would be fun to mix it up.
Well, Mark,
we didn't get your score on Red River yet.
Me? Yeah. I give it a 5. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my all-time favorites. for lots of reasons. I love the classical, Greek almost classical way that it's structured in terms of narrative. The father and the son. The son kills the father at the crossroads. It's Oedipus. The father going blind. Well, that's then you change into a different thing. But that meeting of generations, and they do love each other. And William, you're right. The ending it's like Shakespeare when you get to the fifth act and everything is crazy. Let's just get everybody married. So she shoots the ground, stops the fight,
just make
tells
up
them
already.
the truth. That's right. Yeah, and they say, "I know you, I do, I love you, I love you." And the Red River, it's going to now be the Red River D, and M for Matthew.
You earned it. I love you. End scene.
Yep.
That's right. And cut. Right.
Print it.
So it's very convenient, but it's just a play. It's a story around a campfire, and so you want to put a good button on it. You want to put a good story on it. You don't tell a story about what happened in the cave down the street and say, and then I don't know what she said. She left. You've got to put a button on it. And then she threw a pot of soup on him and walked out the door. Doll's house.
But I do have to say one thing, though, Mark.
Okay, if you have to.
Pennsylvania was a beautiful little town. Would you like to live there? Those people were wonderful. That's what makes it a great Christmas movie to me, because no matter how shitty they were and they robbed the bank, these people treated them wonderfully in the Christmas spirit. They gave them Scrabble.
I got to get my little violin out. Right.
So what do we watch?
They gave him Scrapple. That's right. Who knows? And they introduced the world to Scrapple, didn't they?
Right.
We got a couple minutes left here. What are we doing next week?
You want to do something that you grew up with that is part of your? Let's do something modern. You know what I think? I think all of you should watch two movies that you can watch on. I think you watch on Hulu, and one on Netflix. But The Dig is on Netflix, which is a new movie. It's going to be nominated for Academy Awards. It may be nominated for SAG Awards. I'm not sure.
I thought that was a series.
What?
I thought that was a series. It's a movie.
It's a movie. The Dig. Yeah.
It's Hulu.
Did you watch? You didn't watch it. I recommended it to you. Did you watch it?
You
never listened to me.
Yet.
Should we do something modern next time? Should we do The Dig?
I put it in my to watch queue, but I didn't get a chance.
Would you like to do that, Mark?
Yeah, let's do. We're trying to get off. Where time is up, right? Yeah, we could do The Dig, or we could do Nomadland, which is The Dig is it's a modern movie. It was just made. It'll be part of the awards season. Let's do some awards movies and talk about them.
The Dig.
We can do The Dig, or we could do Nomadland, which will also be nominated because of Frances McDormand's performance. Very different movie. It takes place now. But let's do The Dig. I'd like to see what you guys think about The Dig. You'll probably hate it. I think it's great. But let's do awards movies for the next month.
The Dig it is.
I like it.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for watching Red River.
Yes.
And we'll see you in the comic books.
All right.
All right.
All right.